Stay right there. Don't move. Why are you in this community?
I live here. Just trying to get home.
Then where's your proof? Residents carry access.
What kind of proof are you looking for?
Because people like you don't usually belong back here.
All right. Raymond Donovan, new chief of police, Westbrook PD.
The gate arm stayed down. The resident access system had malfunctioned, which meant everyone entering the preserve at Stone Ridge needed clearance from the moonlighting officer working private security that Sunday evening. Officer Tyler Brennan had a list. He had a radio. He had every tool necessary to verify that Raymond Donovan, the black man in the Mercedes waiting patiently at the entrance, owned the $2.1 million home at 47 Stonebridge Lane. He used none of them. Instead, he used 4 words that would end his career. People like you don't belong here. What Brennan didn't know, couldn't know, because he hadn't bothered to check, was that the man he was profiling had just been appointed Westbrook's first black police chief, and he started Monday. The preserve at Stone Ridge occupied 340 acres of prime Georgia real estate, a gated enclave where homes started at $1.2 million and climbed past 3. Stone pillars flanked the entrance. Wrought iron gates curved in elegant arcs. A gatehouse built to resemble a small Georgian manor controlled access to the winding roads beyond, where manicured lawns stretched toward houses that politicians and surgeons and tech executives called home. Raymond Donovan had moved here 3 weeks ago. The timing was deliberate. He wanted to settle in before the announcement, learn the neighborhood as a resident rather than a title. His wife Patricia had found the house, 5 bedrooms, pool in back, a study where he could finally display 24 years of commendations, certificates, and the Medal of Valor he had earned pulling hostages from a bank robbery in 2015. 24 years in law enforcement, former captain at Atlanta PD, master's degree in criminal justice from Georgia State, 2 tours in Iraq with the Marine Corps before that. He had commanded units, trained officers, testified before city councils, and rebuilt departments with more problems than Westbrook had ever seen. 5 days ago, the Westbrook City Council had voted unanimously to appoint him police chief, first black chief in the department's 85-year history. His photo had been distributed to every officer, posted in every precinct, included in a department-wide email announcing the transition. Brennan had apparently missed all of it. The Sunday evening sun cast long shadows across the gatehouse as Donovan's Mercedes approached. He and Patricia had spent the afternoon at dinner, a quiet celebration, just the 2 of them, marking the end of his first week in the new role. The gate arm should have risen automatically when his transponder pinged the sensor. It didn't. Donovan pulled to a stop. Through the windshield, he could see an officer in the gatehouse, not community security, but a cop in full Westbrook PD uniform, moonlighting for extra income. Common practice. Donovan had worked plenty of secondary employment himself in his younger years. The officer emerged, white, mid-30s, stocky build. His nameplate read Brennan. The Axon body, too, on his chest was already recording, capturing the Mercedes, the gate, the black man behind the wheel in a casual polo shirt. Brennan approached the driver's side window with a gait that Donovan recognized immediately. Weight forward, shoulders squared, the walk of someone who had already made assumptions. "Stay right there, don't move." Brennan's hand rested near his belt. "Why are you in this community?" Donovan's window was already down. The evening air carried the sound of insects, distant sprinklers, the low hum of his idling engine. "I live here, just trying to get home." Brennan's eyes moved across the Mercedes, the interior, Patricia in the passenger seat. His expression didn't change. "Then where's your proof? Residents carry access." Donovan kept his hands visible on the steering wheel. 24 years had taught him exactly how these encounters could escalate. "The gate system seems to be down. That's why I'm stopped here." Brennan stepped closer. The Bodycam frame tightened. "What kind of proof are you looking for?" The officer's lip curled. The camera caught it clearly. "Because people like you don't usually belong back here."
Patricia Donovan's hand moved slowly toward her purse. Her phone was inside. 26 years married to a cop had taught her when a situation was about to go wrong. This one had gone wrong the moment Brennan opened his mouth. "People like me," Raymond's voice remained level. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means I need to verify you actually live here before I let you through." Brennan pulled a clipboard from under his arm, the resident list, alphabetized, updated weekly. Name: Raymond Donovan, 47 Stonebridge Lane. Brennan didn't look at the list. He held it at his side, the pages ruffling slightly in the evening breeze, and kept his eyes fixed on the man in the Mercedes. "You got ID?" "I do." "Let's see it." Raymond reached slowly toward his back pocket. Brennan's hand moved to his holster, not drawing, but resting. The Bodycam captured the position. "Easy," Brennan said. "Slow." Raymond produced his wallet. He removed his driver's license and held it through the window. Brennan took it, examined it for 3 seconds, then handed it back. "This doesn't prove you live here." "It has my address on it, 47 Stonebridge Lane, same address I just gave you." "Could be fake. Could be an old address. I need resident verification." "You have a resident list in your hand." Brennan glanced down at the clipboard as if seeing it for the first time. He didn't flip through the pages. He didn't check page 4, where Donovan Raymond was listed in clear type alongside his address, vehicle registration, and the photo taken during move-in processing 3 weeks prior. "This list is for confirmed residents. I don't know you." Patricia's phone was recording now. She held it low, angled toward the window, capturing Brennan's face and voice. The gatehouse security camera above them recorded a wider angle, the Mercedes, the officer, the gate arm that remained stubbornly down. "Officer," Raymond's tone shifted slightly, still calm but with an edge that Patricia recognized, the voice he used when patience was being tested. "I've given you my name. I've given you my address. I've shown you my ID. The information matches. You have a list that will confirm everything I've told you. What else do you need?" Brennan leaned closer to the window. His face filled the Bodycam frame. "What I need is for you to explain how someone like you affords a house in this neighborhood." The words hung in the evening air. Somewhere behind them, another car had pulled up to the gate, a white couple in a BMW, waiting, watching. "Someone like me." "You heard me." Raymond looked at his wife. Her phone was steady. Her expression was set. "My name is Raymond Donovan. I'm the chief of police for Westbrook PD. I start Monday. You can verify that with a single phone call. You can check your list. You can radio dispatch. Or you can keep standing here making assumptions about who belongs in this neighborhood." Brennan's expression didn't change. He didn't reach for his radio. He didn't look at the list. "Sure you are." A smile spread across his face, the smirk of someone who had heard every excuse and believed none of them. "And I'm the governor. You got any other stories?" He stepped back from the window. His hand moved to his shoulder mic. "Dispatch, this is Brennan. I've got a suspicious individual at the Stone Ridge Gatehouse refusing to verify residence, requesting backup." Patricia's phone kept recording, the Bodycam kept rolling, and Raymond Donovan sat motionless behind the wheel of his own car, denied entry to his own neighborhood, watching an officer who had no idea what Monday would bring. The backup call changed everything. Raymond had dealt with difficult officers before. He had de-escalated encounters that carried more tension than a gate dispute at a suburban community. But Brennan had just elevated a civil matter into an official police response, documented on Bodycam with backup en route. The next few minutes would determine careers. "Officer Brennan." Raymond kept his hands on the steering wheel, visible through the windshield. "I'm going to reach for my credentials. They're in my jacket pocket. I'm telling you this so there's no misunderstanding." Don't move. I'm the chief of police. My credentials will verify. I said don't move. Brennan's hand was on his weapon now, not hovering, gripping. Keep your hands where I can see them. Patricia's voice came from the passenger seat, quiet but clear enough for every recording device to capture. Ray, don't. Ma'am, stay out of this. He's telling you the truth. He's the new police chief. We just moved here 3 weeks ago. And I'm supposed to believe that? Brennan's attention shifted to Patricia. The Bodycam caught her phone, still raised, still recording. Put that down. No. Ma'am, I'm ordering you to stop recording. I'm a civilian in a vehicle on private property. You have no authority to order me to do anything. She was right. Brennan knew she was right. His jaw tightened. The Bodycam captured the frustration spreading across his face, the look of someone losing control of a situation they thought they owned. Raymond spoke again, calm, measured, the voice of a man who had commanded officers, negotiated with hostage-takers, testified under cross-examination. I'm going to reach for my credentials now, slowly. If you want to verify who I am, this is how we do it. His right hand moved from the steering wheel toward his jacket, slow, deliberate, every motion calculated for the cameras. Brennan drew his weapon. The Glock cleared the holster and leveled at Raymond's chest. Patricia gasped. The phone in her hand shook but kept recording. Hands on the wheel, now! Raymond complied. His hands returned to 10 and 2. His expression didn't change. You just drew a weapon on an unarmed man reaching for identification. You were making a furtive movement. I told you exactly what I was doing. I don't know what you were reaching for. My police credentials, which I announced on camera. The couple in the BMW behind them had stepped out of their vehicle. The woman had her phone raised. The man was speaking urgently into his cell. Other residents had emerged from homes near the entrance, drawn by the flashing lights that Brennan hadn't activated, but somehow sensing something wrong at their gate. Sirens approached. Backup was 3 minutes out. Raymond sat motionless. Patricia held her phone steady. Brennan kept his weapon trained on a man whose only crime was driving home in the wrong skin. When backup arrives, Raymond said, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that you had a list with my name on it. You had a radio to verify my employment. You had every opportunity to resolve this professionally. You chose this instead. Shut up. You chose to assume I was lying. You chose to assume I didn't belong. You chose to draw your weapon on a man reaching for ID after announcing exactly what he was doing. I said, shut up. And you chose to do all of this on camera. Blue lights reflected off the gatehouse stone. 2 patrol cars turned onto the access road, approaching fast. Brennan's weapon hand trembled. The Bodycam recorded every vibration. When your sergeant gets here, Raymond said quietly, ask him to describe the new police chief. Ask him what I look like. Then look at the man you've been pointing a gun at for the last 3 minutes.
Sergeant Michael Torres stepped out of the lead patrol car with 17 years of experience telling him something was very wrong. The scene didn't match the call. A Mercedes stopped at a residential gate. A well-dressed couple inside, the woman recording, the man sitting with his hands on the steering wheel. An officer with his weapon drawn, posture rigid, face flushed. Residents gathering at the perimeter. No visible threat, no erratic behavior, nothing that justified a firearm. Torres approached with his hand raised, signaling Brennan to lower his weapon. Brennan, what's going on? Suspicious individual, refused to verify residence, made a sudden movement. Torres looked at the Mercedes, at the man behind the wheel, at the face he had seen in department emails, on bulletin boards, in the announcement that had circulated 5 days ago. His stomach dropped. Brennan, Torres's voice changed, quiet, urgent. Holster your weapon. Sarge, this guy claims he's... Holster your weapon, now.
Something in Torres's tone cut through Brennan's certainty. He lowered the Glock. He slid it back into the holster. He looked at his sergeant with confusion spreading across his face. Torres walked to the Mercedes. He positioned himself between Brennan and the driver's window, his back to the body cam, his voice low but audible. "Chief Donovan, I'm Sergeant Michael Torres. I apologize for—" "Chief!" Brennan's voice cracked. "No, that's not— Nobody told me." Torres turned. His expression carried something Brennan had never seen directed at him. Contempt mixed with exhaustion, the look of a man watching a career end in real time. "His picture has been posted in the precinct for a week. It was in the department email. It was on the news. I haven't been in the station." "You're wearing your body cam, Brennan. You're on duty. You should have checked in." Raymond opened his door and stepped out. He was taller than he had appeared through the window, 6'2", broad shoulders, the build of a man who had served 2 tours carrying combat gear through Iraqi streets. He adjusted his jacket. He didn't reach for his credentials. There was no longer any need. "Chief Donovan," Torres extended his hand. "Welcome to Westbrook. I wish the circumstances were different." He shook it. His grip was firm. His expression was unreadable. "We'll discuss those circumstances Monday, Sergeant." He looked at Brennan. The body cam was still rolling, capturing the officer's face, pale now, the aggression drained, replaced by the dawning comprehension of catastrophic error. "Officer Brennan, you had a resident list with my name on it. Did you check it?" No answer. "You had a radio to verify my employment with the department. Did you use it?" Silence. "You drew your weapon on an unarmed man who told you exactly what he was reaching for. You called for backup on a resident trying to enter his own neighborhood. You told me that people like me don't belong here." Brennan's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "Monday, morning, my office, 8 a.m. Raymond turned to Patricia, who had stepped out of the Mercedes. Her phone was lowered now, the recording saved, the evidence preserved. He put his arm around her shoulder. "Sergeant Torres, please see that the gate is opened. We'd like to go home." Torres nodded to the second officer, who moved to the gatehouse control panel. The arm rose. The path was clear. Raymond guided Patricia back to the Mercedes. They got in. The engine hummed. As they pulled through the gate, Patricia looked back at Brennan, standing frozen in the evening light, his sergeant beside him, his career behind him. "What happens Monday?" she asked. "He finds out what accountability looks like."
The investigation began before sunrise Monday morning. Chief Donovan arrived at headquarters at 6 a.m., 2 hours before his scheduled meeting with Brennan, 3 hours before the formal start of his first full week. He met with Internal Affairs Commander Lieutenant Diana Reeves in his new office, the boxes still unpacked, the commendations still unhung. He handed her a flash drive containing Patricia's phone footage. He provided the timestamp for the gatehouse security recordings. He requested Brennan's complete personnel file. "I want everything," he said. "Prior complaints, disciplinary history, secondary employment records, all of it." Lieutenant Reeves had served in IA for 12 years. She had seen pattern cases before, officers whose behavior was obvious to everyone except the leadership that enabled them. She suspected this would be another. She was right. Officer Tyler Brennan had served Westbrook PD for 11 years. His file contained 9 formal complaints of racial profiling, 9 citizens who had documented encounters similar to what Donovan experienced, stopped without cause, questioned without basis, treated as suspects for existing in spaces where Brennan decided they didn't belong. 9 complaints, 0 sustained findings, 0 disciplinary actions. The complaints had been handled by previous leadership, a chief who retired quietly, a deputy chief who transferred out, supervisors who had documented the allegations and done nothing with them. The pattern was clear to anyone willing to see it. Previous leadership hadn't been willing. The digital forensics uncovered more. Brennan's department phone contained text threads with two other officers, Corporal James Whitfield and Officer Nathan Drake. The conversations spanned 3 years. The content was explicit. Jokes about hunting in affluent neighborhoods, complaints about black families ruining property values, strategies for stops that would be difficult to challenge, a running tally of catches, minorities detained, questioned, humiliated, then released without charges. One message, sent by Brennan 8 months prior, stood out. Got another one at Stone Ridge last night. N-word in a Lexus. Made him wait 30 men for verification. You should have seen his face. The FBI was notified within 48 hours. Civil rights violations under color of law. Conspiracy to deprive citizens of constitutional rights. The investigation expanded from 1 officer to 3, from 1 department to a pattern that federal prosecutors would later describe as systematic racial terrorism disguised as policing. Brennan's meeting with Chief Donovan lasted 11 minutes. He arrived at 8 a.m. as ordered. He sat in the chair across from the desk where his new chief, the man he had profiled, threatened, and held at gunpoint, reviewed his personnel file. 9 complaints, Donovan said. 9 citizens who told the department exactly who you are. Leadership did nothing. Brennan didn't respond. I'm not previous leadership. Donovan closed the file. You're terminated effective immediately. Your badge, weapon, and department credentials will be collected before you leave this building. You're barred from the premises pending the outcome of criminal investigation. You will not contact any current department employees. You will not discuss this matter publicly. Chief, if I could just explain. There's nothing to explain. Your body cam recorded everything. My wife recorded everything. The gatehouse camera recorded everything. You drew your weapon on an unarmed man who told you he was reaching for identification. You called for backup on a resident entering his own neighborhood. You told me I didn't belong in a community where I own a home. Donovan stood. You knew exactly what you were doing. You've been doing it for 11 years. The only difference is that this time you did it to someone who could stop you. Brennan was escorted from the building by 2 officers who had worked alongside him for years. Neither spoke to him, neither met his eyes. His badge was collected at the front desk. His weapon was logged into evidence. His career ended before 9 a.m.
The federal charges came 6 weeks later. Brennan, Whitfield, and Drake were indicted together. Conspiracy to violate civil rights, deprivation of rights under color of law, filing false reports. The evidence was overwhelming. The text messages alone would have been enough. Combined with Bodycam footage, witness testimony, and a decade of documented complaints, the case was airtight. Brennan pleaded guilty to avoid trial. His cooperation earned him a reduced recommendation, but the judge wasn't interested in leniency. You wore a badge, she said during sentencing. You swore an oath, and for 11 years you used that authority to terrorize citizens based on the color of their skin. The only reason you're standing here today is because you finally targeted someone with the power to expose you. 3 years federal prison, 5 years supervised release, permanent revocation of law enforcement certification. His name entered into the National Decertification Index, ensuring he would never wear a badge again in any state. Whitfield received 2 years. Drake received 18 months. Both lost their certifications. Both lost their pensions. The civil settlement came faster than the criminal case. Westbrook's insurance carrier calculated the exposure. Bodycam footage of an officer drawing on the police chief, a documented pattern of racial profiling, 9 prior complaints ignored by leadership. They settled for $200,000 within 4 months. Donovan accepted the settlement. He donated every dollar to police reform initiatives, bias training programs, community oversight boards, scholarship funds for minority candidates pursuing law enforcement careers. This money represents failure, he said at the press conference announcing the donation. Failure by the department I now lead, failure by leadership that allowed this pattern to continue for over a decade. I'm using it to build something better. The reforms he implemented were comprehensive. Mandatory bias training for all officers, renewed annually. Independent review of all civilian complaints, with findings reported to a civilian oversight board. Body camera activation required for all citizen contacts, with automatic audit of footage following any detention or use of force. He created an early intervention system that flagged officers accumulating multiple complaints, the system that would have identified Brennan years earlier if anyone had bothered to build it. The changes drew national attention. Donovan testified before a state legislative committee considering police reform. He was interviewed by national news outlets. He became, reluctantly, a symbol of accountability, the chief who cleaned house because he had experienced firsthand what happened when no one did. 3 years later, Westbrook PD has recorded its lowest complaint rate in department history. Citizen satisfaction surveys have improved by 40%. Recruitment of minority officers has tripled. Tyler Brennan completed his sentence at Federal Correctional Institution JSUP. He was released 8 months ago. His application for employment at a private security firm was denied after a background check revealed his decertification. He currently works at an auto parts warehouse 40 miles from Westbrook. He has not spoken publicly about the incident. Raymond Donovan still lives at 47 Stonebridge Lane. The gate system was repaired the week after the incident. His transponder works perfectly now. Patricia still has the video on her phone. She's never deleted it. She's never watched it again either. "I don't need to," she told a reporter who asked. "I remember every second." The gatehouse security camera footage is used in Westbrook's bias training program now. New recruits watch it during their first week. The approach, the assumptions, the weapon drawn on an unarmed man reaching for identification. They watch Brennan's face when the sergeant says the words Chief Donovan. They watch a career end in real time. And they learn what Raymond Donovan learned during his first week on the job, that a badge can protect you or expose you, depending on how you use it. Brennan used his as a weapon. Donovan used his to build something better.
Hands off the vehicle, step back.
What are you doing in this lot?
I'm making a phone call. Is there a problem?
Yeah, we got calls about somebody casing cars.
Why do you think I'm the one?
Because you don't belong here.
I'm Special Agent Marcus Thompson, FBI. My supervisor's been listening to all this.
You special agent.
Badge number...
The body cam was recording, the phone line was open, and the FBI supervisor, listening to every word, had already dispatched agents before Officer Derek Rawlings even touched his holster. What this cop didn't know, couldn't know, was that the black man he had just ordered away from a stolen Audi at gunpoint was a 12-year federal agent assigned to the Civil Rights Division, the same division that prosecutes cops exactly like him. 15 years in federal prison, badge stripped, pension gone, career erased, and every second of his destruction was documented by his own camera while his victim's boss listened live. The Oakdale Crossing Shopping Plaza occupied 12 acres of prime real estate in one of Atlanta's wealthiest suburbs. Luxury SUVs and European sedans filled the parking lot in neat rows. The Saturday afternoon sun reflected off polished storefront windows, Neiman Marcus, Louis Vuitton, a Tesla dealership at the far end. This was the kind of place where valets remembered your name and security guards nodded politely as you passed. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. But if you're new here, hit that like and subscribe button. These stories needs to be shared, and your support helps expose the truth. Special Agent Marcus Thompson had been coming here for 3 years, ever since he transferred to the Atlanta field office. His dry cleaner was here. His barber was 2 blocks away. His Audi Q7, black, paid off, registered in his name since 2019, sat in the same parking spot he always used, 3rd row from the entrance, under the shade of an ornamental oak.
12 years with the FBI, specialization in public corruption and civil rights violations, commendations from 3 directors. Before that, 4 years as a U.S. Army military police officer, 2 deployments, honorable discharge. Before that, Howard University Law School, top 10% of his class, law review, recruited by the Bureau before he even took the bar exam. He had spent his career investigating officers who abused their authority. He knew the patterns, the pretextual stops, the fabricated suspicions, the assumption that certain people didn't belong in certain places. He had built cases against cops in 6 states. He had testified in federal court more times than he could count. He had seen bodycam footage that would make most people sick. None of it prepared him for being on the other side of the lens. Thompson stood beside his driver's side door, phone pressed to his ear, finishing a weekend check-in with Deputy Director Angela Chen. Routine call, case updates, administrative details. He was wearing a fitted navy polo, khakis, clean fade. His posture was relaxed. His credentials were in the center console, 6 feet away. "Anything else before Monday?" Chen asked through the phone. That's when the patrol car pulled into the lot. Thompson noticed it immediately. The speed was wrong, too fast for a casual pass-through. The cruiser cut across 2 lanes and angled toward his row. It stopped 20 feet behind his Audi, positioned to block any exit. "Hold on," Thompson said quietly. "I've got a local unit approaching." "Approaching you?" "Looks like it." The officer who stepped out was white, mid-30s, average build. His nameplate read Rawlings. His hand moved to his holster before his feet hit the pavement. "Stay on the line," Chen said. Her voice had shifted, no longer administrative, alert. "I'm not going anywhere." Rawlings crossed the distance in aggressive strides. The Axon Body 2 on his chest captured everything: the parking lot, the Audi, the black man in the navy polo standing motionless beside the driver door. The wide-angle lens created mild fisheye distortion at the edges, but the center of the frame was crystal clear. Thompson lowered the phone to his side. He didn't hang up. He didn't put it in his pocket. He held it loosely, microphone pointed outward, the line still open. "Hands off the vehicle." Rawlings was 3 feet away now. "Step back. What are you doing in this lot?" Thompson met his eyes, calm, controlled, unflinching. "I'm making a phone call. Is there a problem?" Rawlings' hand tightened on his holster. The bodycam captured the movement, fingers curling around the grip, thumb resting on the retention strap. His weight shifted forward, aggressive, predatory. "Yeah, we got calls about somebody casing cars." Thompson didn't move. His phone remained at his side, the line to Deputy Director Chen still open. 1,400 miles away, in the J. Edgar Hoover Building in Washington, Chen was already reaching for her desk phone to contact the Atlanta field office. "Why do you think I'm the one?" The question was measured, neutral, the tone of a man who had conducted hundreds of interviews and knew exactly how to let silence do its work. Rawlings' lip curled. The bodycam caught the sneer in high definition. "Because you don't belong here." 4 words. The officer didn't elaborate, didn't need to. The meaning was clear to everyone who would later watch the footage. The prosecutors, the jury, the millions who would see it replayed on news broadcasts across the country. Thompson tilted his head slightly. "I'm Special Agent Marcus Thompson, FBI. My credentials are in the vehicle. My supervisor has been listening to this entire conversation." He raised the phone slowly, deliberately, so the bodycam could see it. "Badge number and precinct, now." Something flickered across Rawlings' face. The bodycam caught it, a microsecond of doubt, quickly buried under 11 years of habit. He had heard claims like this before. Everyone was somebody when they got stopped. Everyone had a lawyer, a connection, a reason why the rules didn't apply to them. He didn't believe it. "Sure you are." Rawlings drew his weapon. The Glock cleared the holster and leveled at Thompson's chest. "Hands where I can see them. On the vehicle. Now." Thompson didn't flinch. His hands rose slowly, phone still in his right, left palm open and empty. He turned and placed both palms flat on the warm metal of the Audi's roof. The position was familiar. He had seen it from the other side countless times. "You're making a mistake," he said. His voice remained level. "A federal crime." "Shut up." Rawlings moved closer. The body cam tightened, Thompson's back filling the center, his hands visible on the roof, his head turned just enough to keep the officer in peripheral view. Then Rawlings leaned in. His mouth moved close to Thompson's ear. The bodycam's microphone was 6 inches away, designed to capture exactly these moments, the whispered threats, the quiet cruelties that officers thought no one would ever hear. He said a single word. The audio technicians who later enhanced the footage confirmed it within hours. A racial slur, barely above a breath, delivered with the casual contempt of someone who had said it many times before. 1,400 miles away, Deputy Director Angela Chen heard it clearly through the open phone line. "I have agents en route," she said, her voice cutting through Thompson's speaker, loud enough for Rawlings to hear. "Officer, you are being directed to holster your weapon and step away from Special Agent Thompson immediately." Rawlings froze. The body cam captured his sudden stillness, the Glock still raised, his breathing audible on the microphone, his eyes cutting toward the phone in Thompson's hand. "Who the hell is that?" "Deputy Director Angela Chen, FBI, Headquarters." Thompson's voice hadn't changed, still calm, still controlled. "She's been listening since before you got out of your car." The sound of sirens reached the parking lot, distant at first, then closer, then unmistakable. Rawlings' weapon hand began to tremble. The body cam recorded every vibration. The first vehicle to arrive wasn't local. A black Chevrolet Suburban with federal plates cut across the parking lot at speed, followed by a second. They angled to block the exits. Not Rawlings' cruiser, but the lanes leading out of the plaza. Standard containment protocol. 4 agents emerged, dark suits, credentials visible, hands near weapons but not drawn. Special Agent in Charge David Okonkwo approached first. He had supervised Thompson for 3 years. He had received Deputy Director Chen's call 90 seconds after Rawlings drew his weapon. "Officer," Okonkwo's voice carried across the parking lot, "lower your weapon, step back from the agent." Rawlings hadn't moved. His Glock was still raised, still pointed at Thompson's back. The body cam captured his hesitation, the rapid calculations of a man realizing his situation had fundamentally changed. "This is a local matter." "This is a federal agent." Okonkwo stopped 10 feet away. His credentials were in his left hand, held high enough for the body cam to record. "Federal Bureau of Investigation, Special Agent, Civil Rights Division." He looked at Rawlings one final time. The body cam was still running. It would capture Thompson's words with the same clarity it had captured everything else. "I've prosecuted 37 officers for civil rights violations. You're number 38.
The FBI's investigation moved with unusual speed. The body cam footage was in federal hands within 2 hours, downloaded, preserved, and flagged as primary evidence. The phone recording from Deputy Director Chen's line was already archived in Washington, time-stamped and authenticated. But the footage only told part of the story. The investigation would reveal the rest. Officer Derek Rawlings had served with Oakdale Police Department for 11 years. His personnel file was unremarkable on its surface. No major commendations, no formal disciplinary actions, a career of apparent mediocrity that had allowed him to operate without scrutiny. The complaints told a different story. 22 formal complaints had been filed against Rawlings over his career. 22 citizens had documented concerns serious enough to put in writing. 14 involved traffic stops of black drivers. 6 involved allegations of excessive force. 2 involved racial slurs, heard by witnesses, reported immediately, dismissed for lack of physical evidence. 22 complaints, 0 sustained findings, 0 disciplinary actions. The FBI subpoenaed Rawlings's departmental records, patrol logs, and personal devices within 72 hours. What they found was systematic. His patrol car's GPS history showed a pattern. For 3 years, Rawlings had been logging off duty at his precinct, then driving his personal vehicle to affluent suburbs outside his jurisdiction: Oakdale, Buckhead, Sandy Springs, neighborhoods with expensive homes and expensive cars, and black residents who could afford them. His mobile data terminal searches told the same story. He had been running plates on luxury vehicles driven by black motorists, dozens of queries with no corresponding incident reports, no calls for service, no documented reason for the searches. His personal phone contained text messages that federal prosecutors would later describe as a roadmap of racial animus. Conversations with other officers, jokes about hunting in wealthy neighborhoods, complaints about black families taking over areas that used to be nice. A group chat called Thin Blue Line, where Rawlings and 6 colleagues shared memes, complaints, and strategies for stops that would be difficult to challenge. One text, sent 8 months before the Thompson incident, was particularly damning. Got another one in Oakdale today. N in a Porsche. Made him sit on the curb for 40 minutes while I verified registration. Love watching them squirm. The FBI identified 14 victims from Rawlings's pattern. Men and women who had been stopped, detained, questioned, and released without charges. Most had filed no complaints. They had assumed nothing would come of it, that the system would protect its own. Now, the system had turned. The Department of Justice authorized federal charges within 3 weeks: deprivation of rights under color of law, assault with a deadly weapon against a federal officer, filing false police reports, conspiracy to violate civil rights, a charge that expanded to include 2 other officers in the text chain who had participated in coordinated stops. The Oakdale police chief resigned before the indictments were announced. The deputy chief followed. Internal Affairs launched reviews of every complaint filed in the previous decade, not just against Rawlings, but against every officer named in the group chat. Agent Thompson gave his statement to federal prosecutors over 2 days. He walked them through every second of the encounter, the approach, the weapon, the slur, the phone call that had captured it all. His testimony was clinical, precise, devastating. The prosecutors asked him how he had remained so calm. He said, "I've seen that footage before. Different officers, different victims, same pattern. I knew exactly what was happening. I knew exactly how it would end." The Bodycam footage was released to the public 6 weeks after the incident. It accumulated 40 million views in 72 hours.
The federal trial took place in the Northern District of Georgia. The courtroom was filled to capacity every day. Journalists, civil rights advocates, law enforcement officials monitoring the proceedings, and citizens who had driven hours to witness what many called a reckoning. The prosecution's case was built on synchronized evidence. They played the Bodycam footage on the first day, letting the jury watch the entire encounter without commentary. Then they played Deputy Director Chen's phone recording, the same moments captured from Thompson's side, the slur even clearer through the phone's microphone than it had been on the Bodycam. They presented the shopping plaza's security footage, a wide shot showing the parking lot, the Audi, the patrol car's aggressive approach, Thompson standing motionless beside his vehicle, Rawlings closing distance with his hand already on his holster. They presented witness testimony, a 63-year-old retired teacher who had been walking to her car when the stop began, a college student who had recorded 30 seconds on her phone before fleeing to her vehicle, a shopping plaza security guard who had watched from the Tesla dealership entrance, too uncertain to intervene. They presented the digital forensics, 3 years of GPS data, hundreds of plate searches with no documented purpose, the text messages displayed on screens large enough for the jury to read every word. 5 other black men testified about their encounters with Rawlings. A surgeon stopped while driving to the hospital, an attorney detained for 40 minutes during a lunch break, a retired military officer questioned about the ownership of his own vehicle. Each story followed the same pattern. Each man described the same phrases, the same posture, the same assumption that they didn't belong. The defense strategy collapsed under the weight of documentation. Rawlings' attorney argued misunderstanding, claimed his client had been following department protocols for suspicious vehicle reports. The prosecutor responded by playing the Bodycam audio. "You don't belong here." What protocol, the prosecutor asked, instructs officers to determine who belongs in a public parking lot based on race? The defense had no answer. Rawlings testified in his own defense. It lasted 4 hours. Under cross-examination, he claimed the text messages were jokes taken out of context. He claimed the plate searches were routine. He claimed he couldn't remember saying the slur captured on 2 separate recordings. The prosecutor played the audio again, then a 3rd time. "Do you need to hear it once more, Officer Rawlings?" The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They returned with guilty verdicts on all counts. Rawlings stood motionless as the verdicts were read. The courtroom remained silent. There was no outburst, no dramatic reaction, just the mechanical process of justice documenting its conclusions. The judge scheduled sentencing for 6 weeks later. She denied bail, citing flight risk and the severity of the crimes. "The defendant has demonstrated a pattern of conduct that represents a fundamental betrayal of public trust," she said. "He used his badge as a weapon against the citizens he swore to protect. The court sees no reason to believe that pattern would not continue if he were released." Rawlings was led from the courtroom in handcuffs. His badge had been surrendered weeks earlier. His pension had been frozen. His 11-year career had ended in a parking lot, documented by his own camera, witnessed by an FBI supervisor 1,400 miles away. Agent Thompson sat in the gallery throughout the trial. He never testified emotionally. He never celebrated the verdict. When journalists asked for his reaction afterward, he gave the same answer he had given throughout the case. "This is what accountability looks like. Nothing more, nothing less." The sentencing hearing drew the largest crowd of any proceeding in the case. Victim impact statements stretched across 3 hours. Men who had been stopped by Rawlings described the fear, the humiliation, the lasting damage of being treated as criminals in their own neighborhoods. The surgeon spoke of missing a surgery because Rawlings had detained him for 45 minutes over a suspicious Mercedes. A patient's procedure had been delayed. Complications followed. The attorney described the terror of having a weapon drawn during a traffic stop on his way to court. He had been late for a hearing. The judge had threatened sanctions before he could explain. The retired colonel talked about calling his wife during a stop, telling her which intersection he was at, just in case. "In case of what?" the prosecutor asked. "In case I didn't come home." Thompson did not give an impact statement. He had never been physically harmed. He sat in the gallery as he had throughout the trial, his expression unchanged. The judge addressed Rawlings directly before delivering the sentence. You swore an oath to serve and protect all citizens equally. Instead, you used your authority to terrorize people based on the color of their skin. You drew your weapon on a federal agent because you could not imagine that a black man belonged in an affluent neighborhood. You did this not once, but dozens of times over the course of years, and your department did nothing. She paused. 15 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole. The civil settlement came 4 months later. The county, facing overwhelming evidence of systemic failure, agreed to pay $8.5 million. $3.5 million to Thompson, the remainder divided among 14 other documented victims. The settlement included no admission of wrongdoing, but the reforms attached to it spoke louder than any legal language. The Oakdale Police Department underwent complete restructuring. An independent oversight board was established with subpoena power. All officers were required to activate body cameras for any civilian contact. Database searches were logged and audited monthly. Complaints triggered automatic external review. The 2 officers named in the Rawlings text chain were terminated and charged. One pleaded guilty to conspiracy. The other awaits trial. Thompson returned to work within weeks of the incident. He continues to serve in the Civil Rights Division, investigating the same patterns of abuse he experienced that Saturday afternoon. He has given interviews sparingly, always returning to the same themes. "Documentation saved me," he told one reporter. "My credentials mattered, but the phone call mattered more. Deputy Director Chen heard everything in real time. There was nothing for Rawlings to fabricate, no report he could write that would contradict what she witnessed." He paused. "Most people don't have an FBI supervisor on the line. That's why body cameras matter. That's why civilian recordings matter. The only thing that changes this pattern is evidence they can't deny." The Bodycam footage is now used in federal law enforcement training. Agencies across the country show it as an example of how bias manifests in split-second decisions. The approach, the assumption, the phrase that revealed everything. "You don't belong here." 4 words that cost a man his badge, his pension, and 15 years of his life. Derek Rawlings is currently incarcerated at Federal Correctional Institution Jessup in Georgia. He will be eligible for release in 2039. His appeals have been denied twice. Marcus Thompson still drives the same black Audi Q7. He still shops at Oakdale Crossing on Saturday afternoons. He still parks in the 3rd row under the shade of the ornamental oak. The only difference now is the decal in his rear window. Small, unobtrusive, easy to miss unless you're looking. FBI.
License and registration, sir.
Good evening, officer. Can I ask why I'm being stopped?
I said license and registration. Now.
I'm a doctor at St. Vincent. Just coming from surgery. Here, my badge.
Sure you are. This vehicle is reported stolen.
Stolen?
Someone like you doesn't drive a car
Someone
like
like
this.
me?
This stop should have lasted 5 minutes. Instead, it destroyed a police career and sparked a national debate. Officer Hendricks claimed the Tesla was stolen. Dispatch records proved he made it up. His body cam, the Tesla's interior cameras, and a witness recording captured him dragging a world-renowned neurosurgeon out of his own car and breaking the hands that had saved over 2,000 lives. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern, and it finally caught up with him. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you're new here, hit that like and subscribe button, because accountability only works when it's recorded. The Tesla Model S pulled out of St. Vincent Medical Center's parking garage at 7:47 p.m., its midnight blue paint catching the last light of a fading sunset. The driver had been on his feet for 9 hours. His surgical cap was still tucked into the pocket of his scrubs. His hospital ID badge hung from the rearview mirror, swaying gently as the car turned onto the main road. Dr. Emmanuel Okonkwo was going home. 41 years old, chief of neurosurgery at one of the most respected hospitals in the state. Over 2,000 brain surgeries performed across a career that began with a teenage immigrant's impossible dream and culminated in a reputation that families prayed for in their darkest moments. He had arrived in the United States at age 11, following his parents from Lagos to a two-bedroom apartment in northeast Philadelphia. His father drove a taxi. His mother cleaned office buildings. They worked opposite shifts, so someone was always home with Emmanuel and his younger sister, always monitoring homework, always reinforcing the same message. The rules exist for a reason, and people who follow them build lives that last. The surgery he had just completed involved a 16-year-old boy who had been thrown from a motorcycle, subdural hematoma, swelling that threatened to crush his brainstem. The parents had been in the waiting room for 9 hours, holding hands, barely breathing, waiting for news that would determine whether their son would ever wake up. Dr. Okonkwo delivered that news personally. The boy would recover, full neurological function expected. The mother had collapsed against him, sobbing, unable to form words. The father had shaken his hand with both of his own, tears streaming down his face. Now Emmanuel was driving home. He would sleep for 6 hours, return at dawn for rounds, and begin the cycle again. This was his life. This was what he had built by following every rule, exceeding every expectation, proving every doubt wrong. The patrol car appeared in his rearview mirror at 8:03 p.m. Dr. Okonkwo noticed the cruiser 3 blocks before the lights activated. He was a careful driver by nature, always aware of his surroundings, always conscious that a black man in an expensive car attracted attention he had never asked for and could never fully escape. He checked his speedometer, 32 in a 35 zone. He verified his turn signal was functioning. He confirmed his registration sticker was current. The lights came on anyway. He pulled to the side of the road with the practiced calm of someone who had done this before. Not often, perhaps a dozen times across 20 years of driving, but enough to develop a routine. A survival protocol he had learned long before medical school, long before his first surgery, long before he saved his first life. Interior lights on, windows down, both hands visible on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. He waited. Officer Raymond Hendricks approached the vehicle with his flashlight already aimed at Emmanuel's face. The Tesla's interior illuminated by the dome light, the surgical scrubs, the hospital badge hanging from the mirror, the exhausted face of a man who had spent 9 hours preventing a teenager from dying. License and registration. No greeting, no explanation. The words delivered as a command rather than a request. "Good evening, officer." Dr. Okonkwo kept his voice neutral, professional. "May I ask why I'm being stopped?" "I said license and registration now." Emmanuel reached slowly toward his badge, lifting it so the officer could see the photo ID, the hospital name, the title printed beneath his picture. "I'm a neurosurgeon at St. Vincent Medical Center. I just came from a surgery." "Sure you are." The dismissal was immediate, complete. The officer hadn't looked at the badge, hadn't registered the scrubs, the exhaustion, the context that would have been obvious to anyone willing to see it. "This vehicle is reported stolen." Dr. Okonkwo's hand lowered slowly. The badge settled against his chest. "Stolen? Officer, this is my car. I've owned it for 3 years. The registration is in the glove box. Someone like you doesn't drive a car like this." The words hung in the air. The Bodycam recorded them with perfect clarity. The Tesla's interior camera, mounted above the rearview mirror, captured the officer's face through the window, the contempt, the certainty, the absolute conviction that he was looking at a criminal. "Someone like me? Step out of the vehicle."
Dr. Okonkwo didn't argue. He had learned long ago that arguments escalated situations, that explanations were interpreted as resistance, that the safest path was compliance followed by documentation. He opened the door slowly. He stepped out with his hands visible. He stood beside his own car, in scrubs still carrying the faint smell of antiseptic, while an officer who had already decided his guilt positioned him against the Tesla's rear quarter panel. "Hands on the vehicle. Spread your feet." The pat-down began, thorough, aggressive, hands moving across his body with more force than any search required. "Officer, I'm happy to provide any documentation you need. My registration, my insurance, my medical license." "Shut up." The hands continued, checking pockets that contained nothing but a wallet, a phone, and a set of keys. Finding no weapons, no contraband, no evidence of anything except a surgeon driving home from work. Then Hendricks grabbed his arm, twisted it behind his back with sudden violence. Emmanuel's body reacted before his mind could override it. A half-inch pull, the instinctive response of muscles that had been standing for 9 hours, that were exhausted beyond conscious control. "Resisting!" The word exploded from Hendricks' mouth like a weapon being discharged. What followed took 11 seconds. The body cam captured every frame. Hendricks slammed Emmanuel against the Tesla. The impact drove the air from his lungs. His face struck the window, his nose breaking against the glass. Blood began flowing immediately, down his lips, onto his scrubs, onto the car he had purchased with money earned by saving lives. Hendricks drove his knee into Emmanuel's back, forcing him to the ground. The concrete met his face a second time. His hands, the instruments he used to navigate the most delicate structures of the human brain, were wrenched behind his back and cuffed with enough force to split the skin on both wrists. His Rolex, a gift from his parents when he completed his residency, shattered against the pavement. "I'm a surgeon. Please, my hands." Hendricks laughed. The body cam recorded it. A short, contemptuous sound that would be played in courtrooms, in news broadcasts, in congressional hearings. "Should have thought of that before stealing a Tesla, Doc." Karen Mitchell had been driving home from visiting her mother at a rehabilitation facility when she saw the flashing lights. She pulled over out of habit, the instinct to give emergency vehicles room to work. Then she saw what was happening. A black man in medical scrubs, face bloody, being knelt on by a police officer beside a Tesla that probably cost more than her annual salary. She recognized the scrubs. She recognized the hospital badge. She recognized the man. 3 years earlier, her mother had suffered a massive stroke. The damage was catastrophic. 2 neurologists had recommended palliative care, making her comfortable while they waited for the inevitable. A third had suggested they seek a consultation with a surgeon at St. Vincent, who had a reputation for attempting procedures others considered impossible. Dr. Emmanuel Okonkwo had operated for 14 hours. He had removed a blood clot the size of a golf ball from her mother's brain. He had repaired damage that the other doctors had considered irreparable. Her mother was alive. Her mother was walking. Her mother had just spent the afternoon complaining about the food at her rehabilitation facility, which meant her mother was recovering, because of the man currently bleeding on the pavement. Karen stepped out of her car. Her phone was already recording. "That man saved my mother's life." Hendricks turned. His expression shifted from aggression to annoyance. "Ma'am, step back. This is a police matter." "He's a neurosurgeon. He operates at St. Vincent. What are you doing to him?" "I said step back." Karen didn't step back. She kept recording. Her hands were shaking, visible in the footage that would later become evidence, but she didn't lower her phone. "I'm not interfering. I'm documenting. That man is a doctor. Whatever you think he did, you're wrong." Hendricks made a decision that would later be analyzed by investigators, prosecutors, and civil rights attorneys. He ignored her. He turned back to Emmanuel, who remained face down on the concrete, blood pooling beneath his broken nose. Karen kept recording. 4 minutes and 37 seconds of footage that would corroborate the body cam, the dash cam, and the Tesla's cabin camera. 4 angles, 4 recordings. 4 witnesses to what happened on that roadside. Sergeant Maria Morales arrived on scene 12 minutes after the initial stop. She had been monitoring radio traffic and heard nothing unusual. A traffic stop, a possible stolen vehicle, routine backup requested. What she found was not routine. A black man in surgical scrubs, face covered in blood, lying handcuffed on the ground beside a Tesla. A civilian woman recording from 20 feet away, her voice audible on the Bodycam feed, repeatedly stating that the detained man was a doctor. An officer standing over the scene with the posture of someone who had already realized things had gone wrong. Morales approached with the caution of a veteran who had seen investigations collapse over less. "Officer Hendricks, report. Stolen vehicle. Suspect resisted arrest." Morales looked at the man on the ground, at the hospital badge visible against his chest, at the scrubs that were now soaked with blood from his face and wrists. "Run the plates." "I already—" "Run them again, now." Hendricks returned to his cruiser. Morales crouched beside Emmanuel, assessing his injuries with the clinical eye of someone trained in emergency response. "Sir, can you hear me? Can you tell me your name?" "Dr. Emmanuel Okonkwo." The words came slowly, slurred by swelling and blood. "I'm a neurosurgeon at St. Vincent." "Can you tell me what happened?" "I was driving home from surgery. He pulled me over, said my car was stolen. I tried to show him my badge, my registration." The radio crackled. Hendricks's voice, stripped of its earlier aggression, replaced with something flatter. "Plates come back registered to Emmanuel K. Okonkwo. No stolen vehicle report on file." Morales stood. She walked to Hendricks's cruiser with measured steps, positioning herself so her own body cam would capture the conversation. "What stolen vehicle report were you responding to?" Silence. "Officer Hendricks, what description did you receive from what dispatch call?" More silence. The body cam recorded it, the pause that stretched into an admission. It matched the description of—" "What description? From what report?" Hendricks had no answer. There was no report. There was no description. There was a black man driving an expensive car in a neighborhood where Officer Raymond Hendricks had decided that didn't make sense. Morales turned back toward Emmanuel. Her voice carried across the scene, clear enough for every camera to capture. "Uncuff him, now." The emergency room at St. Vincent admitted their own chief of neurosurgery at 9:34 p.m. The staff recognized him immediately. The attending physician who examined him had scrubbed in on surgeries with Emmanuel dozens of times. The injuries were documented with the thoroughness of evidence collection rather than routine medical care. Broken nose, requiring surgical repair. Fractured fourth and fifth metacarpals in his right hand, his dominant hand, the hand he used to perform the most delicate procedures known to medicine. Lacerations on both wrists from handcuffs applied with excessive force. Mild traumatic brain injury from the impact with the concrete. The hand injuries were the worst, not because they were the most painful, though they were, because they threatened everything Emmanuel had built. Neurosurgery requires precision measured in fractions of millimeters. A tremor invisible to the naked eye can mean the difference between recovery and permanent disability. The bones that had been fractured were the same bones that controlled the fine motor movements Emmanuel relied on to navigate the structures that separated life from death. 3 corrective surgeries followed over the next 6 months, 14 months of rehabilitation, physical therapy sessions that Emmanuel approached with the same discipline he brought to everything, arriving early, staying late, performing every exercise with perfect form. The recovery was incomplete. 90% function returned. 90% was enough for most surgical specialties. 90% was not enough for the procedures that had defined his career. 217 surgeries were postponed during his recovery. Patients who had been scheduled for life-saving operations were transferred to other surgeons, other hospitals, other cities. Some waited months for procedures that Emmanuel could have performed in weeks.
The damage extended beyond one surgeon's hands. It rippled through a healthcare system that had built itself around his expertise. The department's internal investigation began within 24 hours. The footage was comprehensive, 4 synchronized angles that left no ambiguity about what had occurred. Bodycam, the entire encounter from Hendricks' perspective, including his statements, his use of force, and his laughter at Emmanuel's plea to protect his hands. Tesla dashcam, the approach of the patrol car, the activation of lights without any preceding traffic violation, the officer's aggressive posture from the first moment of contact. Tesla cabin camera, the interior angle showing Emmanuel's compliance, his visible hospital badge, his attempts to explain before any explanation was allowed. Witness phone, Karen Mitchell's footage, capturing the aftermath and providing corroboration for everything the other cameras recorded. The investigation revealed patterns that extended far beyond a single traffic stop. Officer Raymond Hendricks had accumulated 14 complaints of racial profiling over 8 years on the force, 3 excessive force investigations, all closed without discipline, a documented history of targeting black drivers operating high-end vehicles, a pattern so consistent that defense attorneys had begun requesting his traffic stop records as a matter of routine. His personal devices, seized under warrant, contained text messages using racial slurs, Facebook posts referring to Black Lives Matter supporters as animals, private group chats with other officers sharing racist memes and discussing hunting in affluent neighborhoods. The stolen vehicle report Hendricks had cited as justification for the stop did not exist. No such report had been filed. No such dispatch had been made. He had fabricated probable cause to justify a stop that was based on nothing more than a black man driving a car he'd decided didn't belong to him. The false police report Hendricks filed after the incident compounded the evidence. He claimed Emmanuel had been aggressive and non-compliant. He described furtive movements that justified the use of force. He stated that the vehicle matched the description of a stolen Tesla reported earlier that day. The footage showed a surgeon driving home from work. The federal prosecution moved forward with unusual speed. Civil rights violations under color of law, aggravated assault, filing a false police report, deprivation of rights. The evidence presentation took 3 days. Prosecutors synchronized the 4 video angles, playing them simultaneously on screens positioned around the courtroom. The jury watched the encounter unfold from every perspective, the officer's camera showing his own aggression, the witness footage capturing its aftermath, the Tesla cameras providing context he had ignored. Medical experts testified about Emmanuel's injuries, the fractured metacarpals, the 14 months of rehabilitation, the permanent reduction in fine motor function that had ended his ability to perform certain procedures. 5 other black men testified about similar encounters with Officer Hendricks, traffic stops without cause, demands to exit vehicles, searches conducted without consent or justification, a pattern of behavior that stretched back years, documented in complaints that had been dismissed without investigation. The defense strategy followed a predictable template: good faith mistake, reasonable fear for officer safety, split-second decisions made under pressure. The jury's reaction was visible throughout the proceedings, expressions of disbelief when the footage was played, visible anger when Hendricks's text messages were read aloud, heads shaking when the defense suggested that a surgeon in scrubs with a hospital badge around his neck represented a credible threat. They deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing took place 6 weeks after the verdict. The courtroom was filled with Emmanuel's colleagues, his patients' family members, civil rights advocates, and journalists who had followed the case from its first viral video. Officer Raymond Hendricks stood before the bench in a suit that didn't fit properly, his attorney beside him, facing consequences he had never believed would apply to him. The judge reviewed the pre-sentencing report with visible contempt. "Mr. Hendricks, you swore an oath to protect and serve all citizens equally. You violated that oath in the most fundamental way possible. You saw a black man driving an expensive car, and you decided without evidence, without cause, without any legal basis, that he must be a criminal. She paused. You brutalized a healer, a man who has dedicated his life to saving others. You fractured the bones in hands that have performed thousands of surgeries. You caused injuries that may have permanently altered his ability to practice the profession he spent decades mastering. The courtroom was silent. And when given the opportunity to recognize your mistake, to de-escalate, to show the basic human decency that your position requires, you laughed at him. You mocked his profession while his blood ran down his face. She delivered the sentence without emotion. 13 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole, lifetime prohibition from employment in any law enforcement capacity, restitution in an amount to be determined following civil proceedings. Hendricks was led from the courtroom in handcuffs. He didn't look at Emmanuel, who sat in the gallery with the same calm expression he wore in operating rooms, the composure of a man who had learned to remain steady regardless of what happened around him. The civil case was filed within weeks of the criminal conviction. The city's legal team reviewed the evidence in a conference room that had seen dozens of similar reviews, but rarely with footage this comprehensive, this damning, this impossible to dispute. They calculated the cost of litigation. They imagined the 4 video angles playing for a civil jury. They considered the testimony of a neurosurgeon describing how a traffic stop had damaged his ability to save lives. They settled for $24 million. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning, 14 months after the incident. Emmanuel stood at a podium outside the courthouse, flanked by his attorneys and surrounded by reporters. "This settlement represents accountability," he said, "but it doesn't represent justice. Justice would mean this never happened. Justice would mean 14 months of my career weren't spent in rehabilitation. Justice would mean the 200 patients who had to wait for surgeries received them on schedule." He paused. "I'm donating $4 million of this settlement to organizations working on police reform, legal aid for victims of misconduct, and scholarships for students from underrepresented communities pursuing careers in medicine and law. Because the only way forward is to build systems that prevent what happened to me from happening to others." The remaining funds went to his own foundation, established to support families navigating the medical system during crisis. He had seen too many patients whose outcomes were affected not by the quality of their care, but by their ability to understand and advocate within a system designed without them in mind. Dr. Emmanuel Okonkwo returned to surgery 11 months after the incident. His first procedure back was a relatively straightforward tumor resection, a case he would have considered routine before, but which now required the focused attention of someone testing the limits of rebuilt capability. The surgery was successful. His hands performed as they needed to. The patient recovered fully. He resumed most of his surgical practice within 18 months. Certain procedures remained beyond his reach, the most delicate operations that required perfection in fine motor control he could no longer guarantee. He referred those cases to colleagues he trusted, accepting a limitation he had never chosen. The chronic pain in his wrist never fully resolved. He manages it with the same discipline he brings to everything: physical therapy, careful attention to ergonomics, acceptance of a reality he cannot change. He testified before Congress twice, describing his experience as part of broader hearings on police misconduct and civil rights enforcement. His testimony was clinical, precise, devastating, the same approach he brought to case presentations at medical conferences. The department that employed Officer Hendricks underwent comprehensive reform, new training protocols, mandatory bias education, civilian oversight boards with real authority. The changes came too late to prevent what happened to Emmanuel, but they created structures that might prevent the next incident. Karen Mitchell received recognition from the NAACP for her courage in documenting the encounter. She deflected the praise with characteristic modesty. "I just recorded what I saw," she said. "Dr. Emmanuel Okonkwo is the one who saved my mother's life. The least I could do was make sure someone saved his." Officer Raymond Hendricks is serving his sentence at FCI Sheridan in Oregon. His appeals have been denied. His requests for early release have been rejected. He will be eligible for supervised release in 2037, at which point he will be prohibited from working in law enforcement, security, or any position requiring public trust. Emmanuel still drives the same Tesla. He considered selling it, the memories it carried, the blood that had stained its windows, but decided against it. "That car represents everything I worked for," he told a journalist who asked. "If I let what happened take that away from me, he wins. He doesn't get to win." He continues to operate. He continues to save lives. He continues to be the calmest presence in any room, the steady hands that families pray for, the doctor who turns impossible outcomes into recoveries. The footage remains archived in evidence databases, in news libraries, in training materials used by police departments and civil rights organizations nationwide. It shows a traffic stop that should never have occurred, a surgeon who did everything right, an officer who saw only what his prejudice allowed him to see. And it shows what accountability looks like when the truth is recorded from every angle.